G'day, welcome to GoFly Online. My name is Tony Chamberlain. I'm an RAAus Senior Instructor, a Level 2 and Level 4 Maintenance Authority, aerobatic pilot and a CASA approved LAMI. Today we're going to run through a pre-flight, a general pre-flight, but today we'll use the sling as our example. So the first thing we'll check before we get out to the airplane is our documentation. So we're looking for a certificate of airworthiness, certificate of registration to make sure the registration is current, and of course the maintenance release, which is a very important part of our flight today. We want to make sure that the maintenance release is current date-wise, so it expires in October next year at 1447 hours, and at the moment we're at 1366, so we've got plenty of hours to run. We also want to make sure that there's no maintenance due, and by this we need to do an inspection on the undercarriage during our pre-flight for cracking. We've got a 50-hourly oil and filter change due there, and a daily cooling system inspection that needs to be done as well. So it looks like our maintenance release is in order. I'm happy with that. So while we're here, we'll have a look at the oil. So flip open the hatch. Down in here we'll take the cap off the oil tank, and we'll have a look at the level on our dipstick. So we're showing just under half on the oil, so we'll put that back in there, and we'll do what we call the burping on the engine. So we'll leave the cap off so we can hear the oil tank gurgle. We need to hold the propeller and move the prop around and burp the engine. Now keep in mind, propellers are very dangerous, so at all times keep your body out of the propeller arc. Do not pull the propeller through like this. Stand well clear of the propeller arc and use one hand with stable footing, because you need to pull the engine through compression. What we're listening for is the oil to what we call burp. So you'll hear it gurgle in the tank. There we go, we've had one. We'll go through and let it gurgle again. We'll come back to our dipstick and check our oil level. And there we have it, we're past the halfway mark. So ideally, we want to run the oil at least halfway up the stick. If we were going on a long trip somewhere, we can come further towards the top. But if it's down towards the bottom, we need to add oil. And of course, if we do that, we need to write that on our maintenance release with the quantity, and it will probably take only 50 mils of oil. Do not overfill the oil. Okay, before we actually start working on the airplane, checking the oil, make sure that the brakes are on and that the key is out of the ignition. Switches are off. Safety aspect. Okay, I'm happy with that. Here's a dipstick we prepared earlier. Gently put it in the tank, and there I'm showing a fuel level. It's about 25 litres in that tank. Cap is on and secure. Let's check the fuel in the left-hand tank. Oops. And we're down to 20 litres there, so we'd need to put some fuel in before we do anything else, and that's the point of checking our fluid levels before we go any further. So we can go and grab the fuel cart and oil if we needed to before we do the further on the pre-flight. Okay, so we've just fueled up, we've topped up our oil. We'll have a look inside the engine compartment. If you've got a torch, that would come in handy. What I'm looking for in here are any coolant leaks, any oil leaks. It is a requirement on the maintenance release to do a cooling system inspection. On this setup we can't check very much because the hoses aren't really visible, but what I'm looking for is cracking on the exhaust, missing springs on the exhaust joints, and any loose articles, mainly fluid leaks inside the cowl. So we are all okay in there. It's nice and dry, nothing looks out of place, and the same for the other side. So I'll lock that down. And while we're here, just on this side, we'll check our cowl fasteners. Nothing's come undone there. It all looks in order. So as I work away around the airplane, I'll have a look at it and just take a step back. As I was coming out to the airplane, I had a look at it and just made sure that the tyres were inflated. It's not sitting unevenly as well, which relates back to our main undercarriage leg cracking, the possibility of. But all the tyres look good, so we don't need anything there. So I'll work my way around the wing now, looking for any leading edge damage. And while I'm down here at the wing root, I'll do a fuel drain. And I'm looking for water in there. It's quite clean. There's no water sitting in the bottom. So that's a good fuel sample. While I'm on the ground here, I'll have a look for cracking. So with our requirement in the service bulletin on the undercarriage leg, we're looking for cracking down here on the top part of the leg, on the forward side and the rear side, just up the top. They have a history of delaminating. The spat is secure, and we do have tread on the tyres, and the tyre is inflated. We're looking good underneath here. And while I'm down here, I'll just have a look and make sure none of the screws have vibrated out, and I can see the flap hinge hardware while I'm underneath. That all looks okay. Pitot cover off for flight, and our fuel vent. This is very important because mud wasps will build up in here and they only take an hour. They'll do it in the hangar. So I just use the stem in the fuel drain cup just to make sure there's no mud wasps built up in the end of the fuel vent. Everything's okay under there. So we've checked our fuel level and the cap is secure. Again, wing leading edge, looking for any damage. Our lens over our landing light's intact, no cracking there. Around the wingtip, the lights are secure, and what I would do is put my hand on the wing spar and just give it a bit of a wriggle like that, looking down the wing. If there's anything wrong in the wing, you'll see the skin's wrinkling. It also gives you an indication that the undercarriage attachments are secure. There's no creaking going on. No damage on the end of the wing. This is normally where it happens, on the wingtip and on the tail where the airplane is handled, pushed around and it's run into something. So on the control surfaces, I've got the control stick unlocked, so we'll just move the aileron from stop to stop. We do it gently, and I must emphasise that. Don't smash it from stop to stop, because you can do some damage internally to the stops on the base of the control stick. So while we've got the aileron in the down position, I would hold it with one hand while you've got your finger in this hole. So what I'm looking for is freedom of that control rod, that it actually rotates on the bearing and it's not seized up. But it's very important to hold the aileron or put your leg against it, because if a gust of wind catches it on the other side, or someone in the cockpit grabs hold of the stick, you get your finger caught in there and off it goes. So keep that in mind. Check our flaps, no damage, and mainly on the trailing edge. No one stood on the inboard end and creased it here. A little bit of play is normal. And again, the rod end. Just put your fingertip on the rod end and make sure that the bearing is free to move. It's not seized. If it was seized, it could eventually break. And if you selected flap down, you could go asymmetric flap, and then life gets very interesting. Canopy rolls freely, and there's no damage on this side, and the windscreen looks okay from here. We'll check that as we go around. The step is secure, and again, when you hop in the airplane, and please advise your passengers too, don't take a running jump and hop up on the step. They're rated to 120 kilos, so if you're getting up towards that and you jump on it, you're liable to do some damage internally to the structure, or at worst, bend the step here and break it off. Antenna's secure, side of the fuselage looks okay, and underneath the inspection panels are in place. No screws missing. Alright, horizontal stabiliser, and again I would just give it a bit of movement up and down and make sure that it's secure, and if it makes any noises, you know that there's an issue there. Just a note on ground handling the aeroplane. If you need to move it around, and I can't at the moment because the brakes are on, push down on the leading edge of the fin and the large rivets on the inboard end of the spar. If you put the palm of your hand right there and on the leading edge of the fin, that's how to move the aeroplane without doing any damage to the tail. What we don't want to do is push here or sit here because you will crease the skin. You will squash this rib, and if we go outboard any further from there, there is a chance that you may crack the spar, and that would be catastrophic if it came off in flight. So checking the elevator, it's also very important to do it gently. Don't let it go and let it hit the stop, because you will do damage, and it has been done. You will do damage inside, and it's costly to repair. So again, we're checking full and free travel of the elevator, and there's no movement at all. No free play. No free play in the tab. So elevator trim tab. The pin is in place, and from what you can see, all the hardware on the hinge joints, all the pivot points, is secure. Now with the rudder, you can, if you're tall enough, you can actually pull the tail of the aeroplane down like that, using the leading edge of the fin, which is the strongest part, and you can check the rudder travel. Make sure that it doesn't bind. Again, be very careful, be gentle with it, watch your fingers at the top here on the rudder horn, but you can do that, and it should come back to centre. It's spring-loaded to come back to the centre. Let it down gently, and again, we can look at all our hardware on the pivot points. Underneath here, we're looking at our rudder cable attached to the rudder. Make sure the hardware is in place there, and the cables aren't worn where they exit the fuselage. There is a plastic strip there to cut down the wear on it, but still check it. Just grab the cable and rotate it slightly. You can see if it's polished or there are broken strands there where it exits the fuselage. And again, we're looking for damage. So if it's been pushed into the hangar and pushed into something, there'll be damage on the trailing edge. If there is, go and talk to your instructor and get his views on it. Again, checking hardware on the pivot points, free movement, and they both actually move up and down at the same time. They are connected through the centre. Horizontal stab, again, just give it a little wriggle, looking for leading edge damage, bird strikes, people running into it. We all look okay up there. There's no damage. The canopy is nice, clean. It does have current registration for RAOs. That should be displayed in the window. Failing that, in the flight folder. This side of the airplane, we'll check our step, remembering what I said about taking a running jump onto it. So there is a little bit of damage there. Someone's put the heel on it, but that's okay. It's just superficial. And again, the rod end. Checking the rod end for free movement up in there with your fingertip. Trailing edge damage. And while we're doing that, we're just having a general look at the airplane, at the skins, make sure there's no wrinkling of the skin. Right aileron. Again, free travel stop to stop. And the rod end is free to rotate inside. And once again, hold it so that the wind doesn't catch it. Someone takes your finger off. Wingtip, no damage on the wingtip. The light is secure. And again, on the main spar, give it a bit of a push. Look down the wing. Make sure there are no wrinkles in the skin and underneath as well. There's nothing out of the ordinary under there. It all looks okay. There's no damage on the tip. Leading edge, we haven't been run into anything. Landing light lens is secure, intact. We've checked our fuel level. We know we need some fuel before we go. And under the wing, just checking our hardware on aileron and flap again. You can see all the nuts and bolts are in place. Fuel vent, while we're down here, is clear. The wasps haven't been in. Spat is secure. The tyre's inflated. We do have some tread there. And again, checking our undercarriage leg for cracks. This one is fine. While we're under here, we'll do a fuel drain on this side. We don't need to drain heaps out. I mean, that's enough. If there's any water in there, that will show up. So with the fuel drain, just to elaborate on that, we're looking for the fuel, and it needs to be quite clear like that and move freely. If that was water, the surface tension wouldn't allow it to swing freely in the cup like that. So it is fuel. It does smell like fuel. Don't be fooled though, because water in the fuel tank can also smell like fuel when it comes out. So just make sure that's clear, there's no water in the bottom. Looks good to me. We're good to go flying. And again, underneath, all our panels are in place and no screws are missing. So moving up this side, we'll have a look at our windscreen. No cracking, it's quite clean. There's no bugs on there, so we were able to see through that okay. And again, coming back to here, we've done our oil check. What we're looking for in this side, and again the use of a torch, or the torch will help you have a look in there. Make sure your oil tank cap is on. Make sure you've got coolant in here and it's up above the minimum mark. That's our recovery bottle. So when it's hot, it may be higher than that. That cold, down above the minimum mark is fine. And our brake fluid, this is great. We want at least a third of that reservoir. Between a third and the top is good. If it's lower than that, then we could possibly have an issue somewhere with a leak. And again, looking around inside, we're looking at hoses, cooling system, and particularly coolant or oil leaks into the bottom of the cowl, exhaust cracking, and springs are in place. So we'll secure that. And cowl fasteners are in place. There's nothing loose. And the nose wheel spat, it is secure. We do have plenty of tread on the tyre and it is inflated. Underneath, there is no evidence of any coolant or oil stains on the belly of the airplane. Now again, with the propeller, like I said earlier, treat it as though it's live. People have been injured and have been killed by pulling propellers through on airplanes. It's only got to fire one cylinder, it's enough to kill you if you're in the road. So keep yourself out of the propeller arc. So what we're looking for here, on these propellers, they have an Inconel leading edge. We want to make sure that the leading edge is not separating from the blade and that we don't have any major rock dents or rock strikes on the leading edge of the blade. That little bit of free movement that you can see there is the clearance in the drive gears in the gearbox, and that is normal. If it doesn't have that little bit of movement, then there's something wrong. So with the propeller, we'll have a look at the blade, make sure the blade's intact, there's no damage, particularly to the leading edge. Keeping yourself out of the propeller arc as you rotate it. We'll do the same thing on each blade. So we're looking at the leading edge for separation and damage from stones or any other objects further down the leading edge. And again, third blade looks fine. Spinner, this is very important because lately there have been a few spinners lost around the country at other flying schools. These screws do come loose. So we need to make sure that all of the screws are in place on the spinner. Some of them have 6, some have 9, some have more. This one has actually got 9 screws. They're all in place and the spinner is secure. A little bit of movement like this is normal. It doesn't have a bulkhead in the front to hold it. It relies on the back plate. So if any of these screws come out, there's a chance that the spinner can separate from the aircraft and it may do damage on the way past. Alright, just looking at our coolers while we're down here. The oil cooler is the top one and the coolant radiator is the bottom one. We just want to make sure that there's no debris in there, there's no damage, there's no leaking. And I have had airplanes parked out in the open, particularly at air shows, and people tend to use this area as a rubbish bin. And I've found hamburger wrappers and Coke cans and all sorts of stuff in there, so make sure that that area is clear. It's very important. And again, while we're underneath, we'll check our exhaust pipe. Movement like that is normal. It's mounted on springs, so as the exhaust heats up, the pipe can move, and when it contracts as well, when it cools down. So a little bit of movement like that is normal. If it's flopping around in the bottom loose, see your instructor because it's going to need some attention. And again, all our cowling screws are in place, tyres look okay. We've already done a light check, so we know all our external lights work, strobes and landing lights, so we're ready to hop in. Okay, so before we jump in the airplane, just a big picture look. We'll take a step back. Where are we? Where is the airplane pointed? Airmanship is a major thing, and it's not taught as much as it should be. Common sense needs to be taught these days. So having a look at our airplane and our neighbours, we want to make sure that when we start up, the tail of the airplane and the slipstream is not going to end up in someone's hangar. over someone's aircraft where it'll blow the covers off and it can do some stone damage. Okay, climb in the airplane. 1 foot on the step. We have a grab handle here on the side, or you can use the side of the cockpit, the rail. Do not use the canopy because it may not be all the way back and you'll go to step up on it, pull on there, it'll slide open and you'll lose your footing. So 1 foot here, solidly grab on the grab handle and stay on the black area. Don't step out here because you will do damage to the wing skin. Don't step on this. So now I'm up on the wing walk. Because I've flown this airplane before, I know where my seat setting is and it's all the way back. But before you actually go flying for the first time, your instructor will set the seat up for you, so memorise where your seat position is with regard to the pedals and the stick. There's quite a range of movement in the sling, so it can accommodate short people through to very tall people. We'll put our harness aside like that, out of the way. Our seat is set in, and to adjust it, there is a little lever under the front here which you pull across and you can actually slide it backwards and forwards. Lock it in, make sure the seat pins are locked in. Don't try and do it when you're sitting in the chair because you will do damage to the seat base. Trying to push it back, we have to repair the seat bases on a regular basis. So we are good to get in, and to get in the aircraft there is a T-handle in between the seats up here. So we'll use that, we'll rest one hand on that to climb in. Don't lean on the windscreen, don't make the mistake of putting your weight on the windscreen frame. Again, from past experience it's been done and the windscreens have been broken. Okay, before we climb in, we'll just have a look down here on the floor on both sides and make sure there's no loose articles down there that will jam or could possibly jam the rudder pedals. That's okay. And we do have full and free movement of the stick, and we'll just check the controls while we're out here. Just check the controls and make sure that they are moving in the correct sense. It's one thing for them to be moving, but are they moving in the correct sense? If I move the stick to the left, that's a left turn, left aileron will go up, right aileron will go down, and vice versa. Right aileron up, left aileron down, that's a right turn. Stick back, elevator up, stick forward, elevator down. Okay, to climb in, I'm fortunate that I'm quite tall and I can hop in without standing on the seat, but normal procedure is to step on the seat and climb in using that centre handle. This part of the airplane is quite solid. You can put your weight anywhere out here and on the T-bar in the centre, so I can suspend myself there without any problem and I don't have to stand on the seat. The seat is right for me and I can move the controls freely, no problem. Okay, so that's the external pre-flight done. Our internal pre-flight is done now. We're up to the... I'll strap in, we're fueled, we're oiled, we've got all our paperwork, we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to go and have a great flight. Thanks for joining us today, GoFly Online. See you next time.